Your Excellency, the President of the Republic of Rwanda, His Excellency, former Prime Minister of Ethiopia and Chairman of the AGRF Board, His Excellency, the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, His Excellency, the Chairman of the AU, Her Excellency, Deputy Secretary General of the UN, His Excellency Obasanjo, former President of Nigeria, His Excellency Tony Blair, former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, His Excellency Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this high-level presidential panel discussion where we're going to be bringing it all home. My name is Nozipo Shabalala, and what an honor for me to serve my continent today as the moderator of this conversation. Please be informed, ladies and gentlemen, that this event is being recorded, and by participation, you are indicating your willingness to be recorded. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before we get into the panel discussion, I do want to just lift some of the key themes that have come out of the imminent panel discussion that we've just had coming out of this. The call to action there have been very clear. We need to make sure that we are investing in agriculture. We need to leverage the opportunities presented by the continental free trade area. We need to take an intersectional approach and make sure that we have government department coordination and institutional collaboration to achieve our outcomes. We need political leadership where our political leaders even see themselves as coaches that are getting the various players on the field. And we heard a view that says we need to focus on smallholder farmers far more deliberately than we have before. And the rallying call from the Right Honorable Tony Blair as we closed off that session was urgency, clarity, decision-making. And so on the back of that conversation, it gives me a great pleasure to invite at this point the chair of the AGRF Partners Group and the former Prime Minister of Ethiopia to lead us with some framing remarks that will no doubt give color and texture to the presidential panel discussion that we're going to have. We're going to follow that with a presidential address from His Excellency Paul Kagame. But before we do that, ladies and gentlemen, our attention to His Excellency Hailemariam Desalegn for the framing remarks.
Your Excellency Paul Kagame, President of Rwanda and our host, Your Excellency Abiy Ahmed, Prime Minister of Ethiopia, Your Excellency Musa Faki, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Your Excellency Amina Mohammed, Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Your Excellency Olusegun Obasanjo, former President of Nigeria, Your Excellency Tony Blair, former Prime Minister of United Kingdom, Excellencies, Honorable Ministers, all dignitaries and emerging dignitaries joining us virtually all across the continent and the world. Today is an Ethiopian New Year. It is 2013 in Ethiopia. I would like to take this opportunity to say Happy New Year to my Prime Minister, Abiy Ahmed, and ask you to join me if you want to be 7 years younger than you are today. On behalf of the AGRF partners, allow me to express my most sincere appreciation to the government of Rwanda and His Excellency President Kagame for hosting AGRF 2020 this year. We also thank His Excellency for taking off time from his cabinet yesterday to engage Africa's youth. This is a clear testament to his appreciation of an essential truth that African youth will be the ones to shape Africa's future. To say this, our difficult times is an understatement, but it does not mean that we can lose focus on our agenda to feed the continent and grow our economies through an inclusive agricultural transformation. We need to focus on this as much as ever. So we thank Rwanda for being open to taking on this first ever virtual and hybrid AGRF summit, which has been truly innovative and interactive. With this virtual summit, not only have we kept this important conversation going in these critical times, but it has also enabled us to engage more individually than ever before with more than 10,000 participants from 150 countries over the last 4 days. Our target is to get the remaining 43 of countries of the world to join us next year in this truly global conversation. Our theme this year, Feed the Cities, Grow the Continent, acknowledges that Africa is experiencing the fastest urbanization rate of any region in the world. By 2030, 50% of the African population will be living in cities. This is both a challenge and an opportunity. As an AGRF community, we have taken this week to encourage governments, businesses, and farmers alike to focus on the latter, to seize this an opportunity to grow Africa's rural areas, improving livelihoods for Africa's farmers and rural communities. Your Excellencies, this AGRF summit has come at a difficult time for all of us, but it has achieved at least 3 things. Number one, it has had engaging discussions on how Africa can build back better given this pandemic we are living in. Number two, we have been able to build alignment around how to take advantage of our fastest growing urban areas and to very practically connect hundreds of companies with investment opportunities. Through the AGRF Deal Room, we have particularly had 197 companies looking to invest and more than 400 businesses looking for funds. We have had at least 15 African countries engaged with private sector on their priority investment opportunities. Third, we have engaged around the critical priorities we need to address in our food systems in order to achieve the Africa we want. But we know we must do even more to achieve the vision and goals we have set out for ourselves. We must do even more to eradicate hunger on the continent and to provide nutritious food for all. We must do even more to achieve the targets of the Malabo Declaration by 2025, which only 5 years remaining, and the SDGs by 2030. We have in our midst today our distinguished progressive African leaders selected from amongst the best performing few. We are looking forward to hearing from them, Excellencies, on these matters and the vision you have for your countries and the continent. We are looking forward to leadership commitments in order to move us forward. To paraphrase my friend, Right Honorable Tony Blair, who spoke during yesterday's ministerial roundtable, I quote, "We must seize the urgency that this pandemic has brought upon us and use the same urgency to advance the food systems we need for ourselves right now and in the future." End of quote. I welcome you to the AGRF Summit, and I thank you again on behalf of all our AGRF partners for taking your time to engage with us. I thank you.
Urgency that this moment in history has presented for us, and of course a clear call to action to do more to achieve our visions, to eradicate hunger, to make sure that we are improving on nutrition systems, and of course on acting on the outcomes of the Malabo Declaration. Without further ado, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to turn over the floor to our host, the fourth and current president of Rwanda, His Excellency Paul Kagame, to take to the floor to offer us his presidential remarks. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Excellencies, brothers and sisters, Dr. Abiy Ahmed, Prime Minister of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, I wish you the best of the new year. Happy New Year to you and all of Ethiopia. Haile Mariam Desalegn, Chair of the AGRF Partners Group, Musa Faki Mahamat, Chair of the African Union Commission, my sister, United Nations Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed, Dr. Nancy Karibata, President of AGRA, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. A good day to all of you. Even though we are nearly at the end of this year's forum, allow me nevertheless to welcome you all once again, both those here with us in Rwanda and those following online. It was necessary to innovate this unique hybrid format because of the COVID pandemic, but I think it has been a success. I congratulate Dr. Karibata and her team and everyone involved in planning this event and making it happen. I want to acknowledge the speakers from the first panel. It was a very rich discussion, which sets the tone for the conversation we are now about to have. Grasa Machel, Tony Blair, and all of our special guests, thank you for the ideas you have brought to this discussion. And thank you, our wonderful moderator. Agricultural exchange, by definition, involves both a producer and a consumer in a relationship of buying and selling. The goal of agricultural transformation is to get a better deal for both parties. In Rwanda, we have been working to demonstrate that our farmers can achieve significantly higher productivity and income from agribusiness. Doing so requires investing in modern technology, including irrigation and improved crops, as well as more efficient markets and distribution channels. The work we have been doing with the Howard Buffett Foundation at the National Irrigation Cooperative in Eastern Rwanda aims to show that farmers' livelihoods can be successfully transformed at scale and in a sustainable manner. But our food system is also about consumers who desire a greater variety of products at affordable prices. And of course, the food we eat needs to be nutritious, especially for children. Increasingly, African consumers live in cities. Our continent has the world's fastest rates of urbanization and will continue to do so for decades to come. The quality of the urbanization depends in large part on ensuring solid linkages between urban food markets and Africa's rural producers. Our continent is a bread basket, and we are now joined together in the world's largest trade zone, the African Continental Free Trade Area. The only reason why Africa would continue to import large amounts of its food from the outside the continent is that it simply has not been a priority to add value to our own products and do more business with each other. This has started to change, but it will be up to the young people represented here to seize the opportunities available to fundamentally change the business of food in Africa. I know you are up to the task. We are looking forward to the presentation of the African Food Prize later on, led by President Obasanjo. But first, we are going to have a good discussion. On this note, let me end by thanking you once again and wishing you good deliberations.
Your Excellency, thank you very much for a very concise and a clear address that gets us very ready for the conversation that you've just mentioned of the presidential panel discussion. Thank you for the reminder of going back to the basics of buying and selling and making sure that our markets are efficient, ensuring that our distribution channels work, and that what we're actually delivering to the consumer at the end of the day is nutritious. And as we look at our urbanization patterns, that our urban food markets must be linked deliberately to our rural producers. And equally excited, Your Excellency, to see young people stepping up to the challenge of changing the business of food. For now, though, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to move on and transition into our panel discussion. I'm going to acknowledge my panelists now before we launch into the conversation. We're joined by His Excellency Abiy Ahmed, the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, for this panel discussion. Your Excellency, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you. We're joined also by Her Excellency Amina Mohammed, the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations. Madam, it's a pleasure to have you with us. We're also joined by His Excellency Musa Faki Mahamat, the Chairperson of the African Union. And of course, we welcome back His Excellency Paul Kagame to join in the panel discussion and offer some of his views in what should be a robust conversation. I'm going to start off by going to His Excellency Abiy Ahmed of Ethiopia. Your Excellency, when we pause and we look at the play of African countries, we see that Ethiopia is one of the few countries on the continent that has consistently and deliberately placed agriculture and agricultural development plans at the very center of its growth and transformation plans. And many would argue that this is one of the primary reasons why we see Ethiopia as the fastest growing economy. And we've seen these stats shared by the World Economic Forum and the likes of Forbes. The question to you, Your Excellency, is can you share some insights around how this came to be and perhaps even some of the secrets behind your success?
Excellency President Paul Kagame, our host, Excellency Musa Faki Mohammed, our chair, and Excellency Amina Mohammed, the daughter of our continent and the Vice Chair of UN. Also my dear brother and former Prime Minister and Chair of AGRF, Haile Mariam Desalegn. First of all, I would like to wish everyone a happy Ethiopian New Year as we are celebrating our New Year today, welcoming 2013. In responding to your question, one of the most important focus area of my administration through our new homegrown economic reform agenda and our 10-year perspective plan is modernizing agriculture through technology as a catalyst for economic development. We recognize that technology is the main driver of Ethiopia's rapid growth in agricultural productivity, mainly in improved seeds and fertilizers, rather than innovating from scratch. Adapting existing technologies from other parts of the world to local agroecologies has also been one of our ways of developing this sector. Another key insight is to invest accordingly. This means robust public investments in extension services, public research institutes, and public seed enterprises to ensure affordability for farmers, bringing in cooperatives and private seed companies as a key partner. Important also is continued learning to identify persistent and emerging problems. We are currently undergoing an agricultural policy revision process that puts those lessons to practice for example, by empowering our partners to take a greater focus on building efficient markets.
Your Excellency, thank you very much for those practical guidelines you've put forward, and you've located your responses in a homegrown economic agenda. You've spoken about being deliberate about harmonizing agriculture and technology, improving seeds and fertilizers, and emphasis on not reinventing the wheel. An interesting message that seems to come back in this conversation. And of course, you've landed on the point of public investment, making sure that we're deliberate about how we are investing in the sector, bringing in cooperatives, and perhaps a point that one doesn't hear often, a commitment to keep identifying emerging problems and a commitment to also solving the ones that remain persistent. It's an incredible way to kick us off in this conversation. Your Excellency Amina Mohammed, I come to you next, Madam. And if we pause to think about the fact that we are now less than 10 years away from the UN targets to eliminate hunger in the world, the question to you, Madam, is what will Africa need to do in order to achieve her goals? And perhaps there's a secondary question here. What is your greatest concern about progress? And what is your message, if you will, on how we might build sustainable food systems on the continent? Over to you, Madam.
Thank you very much, and it's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you, President Kagame and our Chair, Haile Mariam, and a big Happy New Year to Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and the people of Ethiopia. All I can say is I'm happy to be 7 years younger today. I really welcome this debate, and especially that I have my brother Musa Faki here. I think the first question about what Africa needs to do, Africa is already telling you what it's doing and where it's going. So it is leading and doesn't need anyone to tell it what to do. I think what we need to ask is that what's the support that we're going to give it, and what are those challenges that we see. COVID today presents an opportunity to recalibrate those policies, finance, climate, people, in a response that will achieve sustainable food systems and that leave absolutely no country that we have on the continent behind. And I think that Prime Minister Abiy has given us those building blocks for what we need to do, and I think underscore, let's not reinvent the wheel. Frameworks and policies exist, and we should just use them and adapt to them and improve on them. The 2063 agenda, the 2030, so don't reinvent. I would have three headlines that I would say give me greater concern, but also I'm optimistic about and hope. First, that we need to address implementation, not talk about it, act on it. And you have to start with the steps that really focus on what it is a national plan and intentions are around the investments that they want to make for it. I think we have to pay particular attention not to put a cookie cutter on every country to say we're all the same. The context matters. This is a question of the long haul. There's nothing that's going to happen in a food systems that is going to take a year or 2 years or a meeting like this. It is a generation. And I think so we have to set the expectations, and then we have to push year by year to see what it is that we are achieving. And I think here, the plans that are on the table, what we need, and perhaps a little slow to put forward, is constructive pipelines of those investments that we can leverage around the world. And those pipelines really to help underscore the bigger frameworks of the Continental's Free Trade Agreement, which will work within borders and across borders. And I think that on the implementation, to have less fragmentation, to see this as a whole of development, sustainable development, that all the sectors have a key role to play and how to come around that more holistically. The second point I had was the international community. We need genuine partnerships. We cannot just talk about these partnerships. They have to be ones where they're tailor-made. We are talking about investments that are at scale and timely, and that if there is a challenge or a risk, then let's find the solution to doing away with the risk and the challenge. So how our partners come to the table in addressing access to markets, in really looking at the externalities that we've seen being exacerbated in the moment of COVID to address. So on the international community, there really needs to be a very serious conversation about what it means to support Africa. Last but not least, people. Our women and our youth. This, for me, is an opportunity for an intergenerational transition. Prime Minister Abiy talked about technology. At one time, the dying profession were teachers and farmers. And if you want young people to come into that, you have to make technology accessible. You have to make agriculture and food systems cool and something that they want to be a part of. And I think that that is something that we need to do in investing at the local level. The local level is the weakest and the least invested in. And I think Prime Minister Abiy made a good point of investments in extension services, which is at the local level. It is the foundation. And without that foundation, we will not build the Africa that needs to feed its cities or grow its continent. So that local level, really, really important in terms of doing that. And, at the end of the day, it is about cities, it is about youth, it is about technology, and the consumers are going to be young people. So now's the opportunity to make them part of shaping that future and the consumption that they will have, which will make sure that we get that right balance between what we're doing as a people and the environment that we live in.
Your Excellency, fantastic and robust contributions there. I'm going to play them backwards, starting off with your call for making sure that young people have a seat at the table, that their voices are heard, that they're part and parcel of shaping the responses that we want to see coming out. And of course, re-emphasizing the importance of investing at the local level. You've spoken about the partnership with the international community. And again, just reminding us that there will always be risk. But if we tailor that risk, if we find each other in conversation, we might be able to respond at scale and in a timely way to the opportunities that our partnerships can unlock. And Madam, the final point that I want to raise here is you coming back to a central theme, which is implementation. And of course, a very deliberate focus as well on identifying those constructive pipelines of investment so we can get to doing what we've set out to do for ourselves and what we've already started to doing. And very clearly a need for us to recalibrate. We have the frameworks, as you've said, we've got the policies, we just need to recalibrate for the context that we find ourselves in. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I now move, ladies and gentlemen, to the chairperson of the African Union, His Excellency Moussa Faki. Sir, this is a question that Ambassador Sako also took on in the earlier panel. And I'd like to put it to you too. And it's the question of the 2019 CAADP biannual review that revealed to us that only 4 countries were on track to achieve their 2025 targets. And of course, what this tells us is that business as usual is just not going to be enough from here on. The question I'd like to pose to you, the invitation to you, Your Excellency, is in your capacity as AU chairperson, what is the message you'd like to give today to African leaders in order for us to see that number move in the right direction and certainly not stay beneath a mark that is acceptable as a measure of success?
Thank you very much. First, let me say Happy New Year to my brother, His Excellency Prime Minister Dr. Abiy Ahmed and the former Prime Minister Haile Desalegn, to my sisters and brothers, Ethiopian ones and Africans like me living in Ethiopia. Madame, allow me to speak in French, if possible.
Yes, please, sir. Go ahead.
D'abord, je voudrais remercier le président Kagame de nous inviter à prendre part à cette importante réunion sur l'agriculture et la nutrition. Je voudrais également remercier l'ancien Premier ministre Haïlé Mariam Desalegn pour son engagement dans ces secteurs quand il était en fonction et bien après. Comme l'a si bien dit ma sœur Amina Mohamed, la question est épineuse. Avec un continent d'1,2 milliard d'habitants, 30 millions de kilomètres carrés, dont une grande partie des terres arables, c'est à juste titre que le continent africain peut être considéré comme un panier. Malheureusement, on dépense 65 milliards de dollars pour importer des aliments en Afrique à ce jour. C'est absolument inacceptable. En 2013, les chefs d'État et de gouvernement ont pris la décision de consacrer dans leurs budgets nationaux au moins 10% à l'agriculture. Nous avons dû mettre en place un mécanisme pour essayer d'évaluer les États et nous avons constaté que seulement 4 États sont dans la voie d'atteindre l'objectif. Il y a le Rwanda, et je me profite pour féliciter le président Kagame. Il y a le Maroc, le Ghana et le Mali. C'est vrai que dans cette évaluation, il y a 36 autres États qui ont fait des progrès par rapport à la première évaluation. Mais ce n'est pas suffisant. Ce n'est pas suffisant du tout. Et maintenant, avec le Covid, nous avons constaté l'impact de cette situation. Je vous avoue que dans le cadre de la stratégie de l'Union africaine pour faire face au Covid, autant nous sommes inquiets sur le plan sanitaire, nous l'étions également sur le plan alimentaire. Parce que beaucoup de pays attendaient des cargaisons de riz qui venaient d'Asie. Donc il faut attendre que ça vienne de Thaïlande, du Vietnam, du Cambodge et que sais-je encore. Donc, la crise sanitaire s'est doublée d'une crise alimentaire. Parce que les transports sont bloqués, parce que la situation du Covid n'a pas permis aux importateurs et aux exportateurs de pouvoir faire la transaction. Je crois que c'est un rappel extrêmement important. Et donc, il y a nécessité, à mon sens, un être humain peut s'accommoder du manque peut-être de l'absence de l'électricité, la mauvaise route, les mauvaises couvertures Internet, mais il ne peut pas ne pas manger. Et donc, la priorité des priorités doit être l'autosuffisance alimentaire. Nous avons les terres, nous avons l'eau, il faut investir davantage, ça c'est mon message, dans l'agriculture. Il faut moderniser cette agriculture et je crois que les capacités sont là. Avec la zone de libre-échange continentale, il faut d'abord permettre au marché africain lui-même de s'auto-alimenter. Il y a des pays qui sont excédentaires et il y a d'autres qui sont déficitaires, parfois dans la même région. Manque d'infrastructures, manque d'habitude de commercer entre nous, nous sommes obligés d'importer du riz, par exemple, d'Asie. Alors qu'on peut acheter, je ne sais pas, du sorgho, du maïs, dans le pays juste voisin. Donc, il y a pas mal de dysfonctionnements dans notre commerce, dans notre façon d'agir. Je crois qu'il faut de nouveaux paradigmes à la matière. C'est quelque chose qui est absolument urgent et je pense qu'avec les CFTA, à quelque chose malheur est bon. Le Covid est venu nous rappeler que nous sommes dans une situation extrêmement précaire et que l'on ne peut pas éternellement attendre à ce que la FAO ou le PAM, merci Amina, viennent très souvent en aide à des populations. Je pense que l'autosuffisance alimentaire doit être la priorité des priorités.
A very big thank you, Your Excellency, and in particular for starting off with reminding us of the numbers, $65 billion per annum of imports, and underscoring how this is absolutely unacceptable and giving us a very clear baseline of which we need to improve on that number. You spoke, of course, about the need to be very clear about our budget allocations, again, calling on the need to also invest in the necessary infrastructure. The point being made there that although other infrastructural challenges exist and are being addressed, we simply cannot overlook the reality that each and every African needs to go to bed having eaten something. You bring us, of course, to the continental free trade area. That is both an opportunity for us to take head on some of the trade barriers that might be standing in the way of us really optimizing this expanded market opportunity. Your Excellency, thank you very much. And I think it's a beautiful way to segue to His Excellency Paul Kagame, if I may, with this next question, because Your Excellency, we know that you have served as chairperson of the African Union from 2018 to 2019. And as chair, we saw you promoting the single African air transport market, as well as the African continental free trade area. If there's one thing that is clear, is that President Kagame knows how to get things done. Your Excellency, the question to you is, with 10 years left to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, what do you think needs to be done now?
There are many things that definitely need to be done, and some of it is already being done. But staying on track to achieve the SDGs to begin with is going to be even more challenging alongside the COVID-19 pandemic. We're already behind the schedule for 2030, as we all know. But in this particular case, agriculture is going to be key to regaining momentum, because it is the main source of livelihood for 2/3 of Africa's population. But of course, everyone, 100%, everyone needs food. But on the part of the livelihood, we have those 2/3 of our continent's population. Therefore, we need to stay on course with the key things. Technology, particularly broadband internet, quality education and training for young people, reinforcing health systems, and ensuring gender equality. We also need better collaboration with our global partners, particularly when it comes to finding resources to invest in these areas, and particularly to allow Africans to have the fiscal space needed to build back our economies to pre-COVID levels of growth. Now, there are those things we were able to do and together, and will continue to do since the African Union itself, that brings together our continent, has emphasized working together, and we see better collaboration in this area. And things like single African air transport market and African continental free trade area have emerged and allowed us to therefore maximize on the opportunities available for our continent. So it's really in our hands, and we already know what we need to do. People are trying their best. Our best hasn't been enough so far, so we need to do more, we need to do better, we need to work together. So I think the path is clear. The ways to get to where I want to go is also clear. I think we can increasingly take responsibility for ourselves and what we have to do, and we will continue to make a good improvement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. And again, a sobering reminder, just to remind ourselves that as we look to 2030, we still have the job of ensuring that we are staying on track. And where there has been being behind on schedule, we need to make sure that we are catching up. You've also, of course, mentioned, Your Excellency, that we've got to stay on track, not just on one metric, but on a number of metrics, on technology, on broadband, on education, on training, on healthcare, on gender. And it speaks to this intersectionality of these sectors and focus areas that we started off with in the conversation. I do want to land on two of your points as well, creating the fiscal space so that Africans can build back better as a key part of this conversation. And perhaps the last call to action, our best has not as yet been enough. We all need to take individual and collective responsibility to do what we need to do. The pathway to delivery is clear. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. We still have got a bit more time, so I'm going to really try to maximize the time that I have with you. So I'm going to go back to His Excellency Ahmed, if you will, and I'd like to bring on to the table the question of malnutrition on the continent, which has increasingly been aggravated, we know, by the impact of COVID-19. The question to you, Your Excellency, is what can the continent learn from Ethiopia's positive trajectory when it comes to reducing malnutrition? Over to you, please.
For one, higher incomes and agricultural productivity alone do not guarantee healthier nutrition or healthier lifestyles. Our initial approach of delivering technologies for staple crops, seeds and fertilizers appears to have neglected some food groups, mainly proteins. Hence, renewed focus on proteins is targeted. Understanding local food culture and educating farming households on the need and how to supplement local foods is key. Ethiopia has indigenous crops with richer nutrition profiles like teff and lentils that are well entrenched in our food culture. These are critical assets and need targeted public investments in order to innovate higher yielding varieties. In this regard, we need local innovation and other incentives to support these crops. Lastly, I absolutely agree with my sister Amina. Identifying the right partners or channels to reach children is important. As she stated well, so as to realize that it's the only way is by focusing on women. When I say women, mothers and schools. So importantly, empowering women to be active in household decision-making is critical, and we should do that so as to achieve our goals. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Again, a poignant reminder here of the assets that are sitting within our remit. This, of course, being local food cultures that we really need to begin to understand and appreciate, and beyond understanding and appreciating them, investing in these assets so that we can see some innovations coming through that lead to high-yielding varieties that then we can take to market. Again, re-emphasizing the importance of empowering women, in particular in decision-making, a thread that I'm sure is going to be a very clear call to action as part of these broader conversations. Your Excellency, Amina Mohammed, you were mentioned in the previous response, so I'm going to come to you next with this question. But I want to turn our focus to the reality, if you will, that there have been several summits around the world and around food for many, many years. And so in your capacity as the UN's Deputy Secretary General, and in anticipation of the 2021 Food Systems Summit, I've got two questions for you. The first one is, what's going to make this summit different in terms of its vision, but also in terms of its impact? And of course, the second question is, do you have a special message to the skeptics who are probably questioning that, are we going to have yet another summit? Over to you, Madam.
Thank you very much. Well, I mean, I think the first thing we did that is different is that we put a woman in charge, and Dr. Agnes Kalibata is the best that there is. And we put an African woman in charge. And so I think that tells you that this is a much more inclusive discussion and summit than just talking at 40,000 feet. We want to bring it down to the regions around the world, but also the local communities. And we're listening, not prescribing. We're demystifying these global summits into what are local realities and bringing those issues forward. But I think we're also underscoring the urgency and the opportunity of COVID. President Kagame talked about the number of areas that we really need to invest in to make up the time we already lost before COVID, and now it's double trouble. And so I think that we must put at the forefront the context we're dealing with. Climate change is not waiting for anyone, it continues. The rates of poverty continue to increase, and so do inequality, and the conflicts haven't gone away. These are very complex, they take time, they are with us, and they are very different. So it's not conflict in the one word, and that is a context that we're all leaders are having to deal with. So this conference summit acknowledges that. It does talk about the acceleration that is needed. And let me just say that we have a decade to make some really big moves forward. But a decade is just a blip in the history of our countries and our continent. And I think that we must also not think that the decade's going to finish it, but the decade is an important turning point in a transition to get results. It's going to be about transforming our food systems. As my brother Musa Faki said, we cannot continue to spend that kind of money on importation. It should be export. Our people should come first. We should value the food and the nutrition that we see in our food. By the way, nutrition doesn't come from outside, comes from within the continent. So transforming food systems is going to be a big message. It is an occasion where it becomes a people's summit that bears solutions, because there's so much conversation about the risk, the challenge, why not to do it. But we need to bring in how to do it and why to do it, because the implications of a hungry stomach or hungry people, I think everyone knows that in the continent. We need to think about how food arrives on our plate. We are talking about having a better influence on sustainability. And I think that we need to have a conversation about that in our countries, that it is not just a policy of sustainable development, that we understand what that means for each country and that we bring people along with it. I think in Africa, we were doing sustainability a long time ago until somehow someone moved us off a track onto what is not sustainable. And we are coming back to that now. There's a strong interface between science, policy, and action. I think here we need to invest more in our institutions so that we get that stronger policy face with science and policy. And then I think, what's different is again, bringing youth into this conversation in a way that we are not ticking the box, they're leading it. As I've said to everyone, when you come around the table, pick the youngest person around the table and ask them to chair the meeting. It doesn't mean that you're asking them to run your life or your country, but you're giving them a chance at what it is like to be in leadership. And we need to continue to do that. So they are co-chairing on the action tracks. They are a very big part of this because they have the energy, it is their future, and they need to shape it. And we need to know that our future is dependent on the quality of theirs. And so we need to inform that. And this summit is about getting that just right. Thank you.
I think the message has landed loud and clear, Your Excellency, not only to the skeptics, but also invigorated everyone who was already on board for the 2021 summit. But you make some incredible points here, and perhaps a challenge to every single leader, not only on the panel today, but who's tuned in. Will you invite a young person to chair a meeting in the coming week and just really begin to empower their voices as we begin to normalize the idea of young people sitting at the table and building the skills and the muscles of leadership for themselves. I do want to pick up on a couple of other points. You spoke about sustainability and, of course, the need to get back on track in that regard. And I think a poignant reminder for us not to forget that we have a decade, but the decade is not the end of the journey itself. It's an important part of a much longer journey, but at least a milestone that we've got to hit in the near future, and with conviction in terms of what our achievements look like at that point. So thank you so much, Your Excellency, for that. I'd like to move now to His Excellency Musa Faki once again. And Your Excellency, I really want to bring again the focus on COVID-19 and the challenges that has brought to not only the world, but certainly the continent. And to ask you if you have the single most important message for Africa that you think you would like to share to strengthen the resilience of Africans, and in particular, as we think about how do we respond to challenges of shocks and stresses, including climate change, that Her Excellency Amina Mohammed brought back into the conversation. Your Excellency, over to you.
Merci beaucoup. Je pense que s'il y a une leçon à retenir de ce que nous vivons actuellement avec le Covid, c'est celui de réfléchir sur des actions à l'intérieur du continent africain. Notre système est excessivement extraverti. Sur le plan économique, sur le plan commercial, sur le plan technique, je crois qu'il faut savoir compter sur les opportunités internes du continent et davantage intégrer le continent. Il y a des possibilités extraordinaires à l'intérieur du continent qui ont été négligées et qui doivent être mises en œuvre. Ça, c'est la première des choses à faire. Le Covid nous a démontré la fragilité de nos systèmes sanitaires, nos systèmes éducatifs, la fragilité de nos infrastructures. Alors que nous avons la possibilité, je crois que c'est un indicateur fort pour nous de recentrer sur l'essentiel pour pouvoir faire face à ce genre de pandémie. La jeunesse, les femmes, la capacité de résilience des femmes africaines a démontré qu'elles sont capables de faire face à toutes les situations. Le changement climatique frappe le continent africain, que ce soit dans la corne de l'Afrique, au sud, et notamment dans le Sahel. Actuellement, le Sahel, qui d'habitude connaît la sécheresse, actuellement, nous sommes dans des phases d'inondation. Donc, le changement climatique est tel qu'on part d'une extrême à une autre, où c'est la sécheresse totale, où ce sont les inondations. Actuellement, le Soudan, le Tchad, le Niger, le Mali, jusqu'à la Mauritanie, le Sénégal, toute cette bande sahélienne est aujourd'hui dans une phase d'inondation. Donc, la dimension changement climatique, on doit y tenir compte, parce que le développement est d'abord sur les populations, et ces populations-là doivent être bien préparées. L'exode rural. Aujourd'hui, on veut développer l'agriculture, on veut la mécaniser. Bien sûr, il faut investir, mais les bras qui travaillent, parce qu'il faut les reconnaître, notre agriculture est encore essentiellement traditionnelle. Donc, ces bras valides sont dans les villes et l'arrière-pays est complètement abandonné. Aujourd'hui, nourrir des mégapoles comme Lagos, comme Kinshasa, comme le Caire, c'est pas une mince affaire. C'est un problème réel et je crois qu'il faut recentrer sur les capacités internes du continent. Sur le plan sanitaire, la réponse que nous avons pu apporter a été possible grâce à la solidarité africaine. Je crois que pour une fois, nous avons travaillé de manière coordonnée selon une vision commune qui nous a permis d'amoindrir le choc. C'est une leçon qu'il faut également étendre à d'autres domaines.
Your Excellency, thank you very much again for a robust response there. The emphasis on integration as a starting point, but also you make the point of us confronting the fragilities that have been exposed by COVID-19. Again, another opportunity here to also think about the inherent resilience of women and the extent to which we are tapping that resilience as we look to build more resilient systems. The emphasis on climate change, that ultimately everything that we are doing is for the development of the people. And if anybody is being exposed to the impact impact of climate change, it is the very people. And finally, Your Excellency, you remind us that we really need to do the work of modernizing agriculture, mindful of the fact that we are bleeding skills, as many skilled agriculturalists, if you will, from the rural areas are migrating into the cities. Some incredible opportunities for us to think about and to be more deliberate about. I'd like to maybe bring this final question to His Excellency Paul Kagame, please, Your Excellency. And I want to just build on this idea of the conversation around young people. What we do know is that your leadership on the continent has inspired lots of young people and upcoming leaders alike. And the inspiration is really around your transformative agenda that we are all observing as young people on the continent. The question to you, Your Excellency, is how would you bring that leadership to bear on your colleagues in building a resilient food system in Africa? Over to you, sir.
Well, that's a difficult question. First of all, like you asked the question when you directed it to Deputy Secretary General of the UN, Amina Mohammed, and you are saying, what is going to be the difference with the next year's summit, so that it just doesn't become summits and summits? I think this is a pertinent question for all of us and for everybody elsewhere, because we don't meet just for the sake of meeting. And the best way to inspire or to be inspired, as we all have been, and everyone else has had their contribution in inspiring people towards transformation or towards any change that is needed, is actually to see things happen. We need to do, like there is a sad story always one thinks about for our continent. We have seen and talked about the huge potential the African continent has. It's young people, it's women, it's, everything like we have, including all kinds of natural resources. But we have talked about the potential for decades, 50, half a century, talking about the potential. Yes, we have it. That's a fact. But we need to transform, and move from the potential to reality. We want to see what we have talked about and want to achieve, and the Africa we want to see it happen. So my call to anyone, or especially the young people, is to have this kind of mindset. The mindset of doing things, the mindset of moving from one point to another, and you can easily see that this is what has led you there, and this is what you needed to do, and you have done it. So that you don't keep running around in circles. There is absolutely no reason why Africa has continued to be where it is. Yet, on one hand, we talk about what we really have as a resource, our people, our young people, the educated ones, the use of technology that people have now had access to in terms of knowledge and different things. So the challenge is that we all have, young and old leaders of our continent, girls and boys. It's about making sure that this reality happens and we have transformed from the potential to actual reality. Otherwise, I could use the analogy we have, it's like an aircraft on the runway. It has to fly. So it needs to use the runway and take off and fly, and we see it doing what it needs to do, whether it is transporting people and so on. So our continent should not be that aircraft that has just remained on the runway and never took off and flew to, greater heights to where it needs to be. So everyone needs to be challenged by this kind of thing. We aren't an aircraft that stays permanently on the runway. We are an aircraft that needs to use the runway and take off and get to where we want to go. So that is my answer to that.
Your Excellency, I think it's certainly going to be a lovely tagline that I foresee making its way felt on social media. Let us not be aircraft that remain on runways as unfulfilled potential. What an incredible message for us to begin to wrap up this conversation. I'm seeing that Her Excellency Amina Mohammed wants to jump in. I think she has a comment. So Your Excellency, let's go to you. Let's hear your voice in this.
As a minority voice on the panel, I hope the Excellencies will just give me just a minute. I love the analogy of the aircraft that is trying to take off on the runway. But what I will add to it is that those wings have to be equal, male and female. So we need gender parity as we take off on the runway.
Completely with you on that. 100%.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. So our aircraft is not on the runway, it is taking off, and the wings are balanced because we are certainly taking to the skies. Now, as we begin to wrap up this conversation, I would like to perhaps close it off in a way that will be memorable and in a way that our audience is also going to enjoy. So, Your Excellencies, I would like to invite you to all think about the busiest street in the city where you live, the one that you has the most traffic, that you don't enjoy going on. And I'd like you to think about a billboard on that street that everyone who is stuck in traffic is going to have an opportunity to read and to take in. Now, here's the challenge. The billboard has the following words: African food systems. And Your Excellencies, you're going to have to complete the sentence. Now, there are a couple of rules. It's a billboard, so it is not a paragraph. It is not an executive summary. It is not a summary of your conversation, no more than 10 words. But the billboard starts with African food systems. And we started off by hearing the voice of His Excellency Desalegn. I'd like to bring him on to potentially bring his voice on as well, if it is possible, technical team, so that he can also kick us off with his billboard, and then we'll make our way all the way through to see who might have the most innovative billboard that we're going to remember. So, I'd like to go to His Excellency Desalegn, technical team. I hope you can assist by putting him on screen for me. Your Excellency, we are in the busiest streets in your city, and the billboard starts with African food systems. Please complete the sentence for us.
African food systems should be transformed, and it's in such a way that we will have nutritious and inclusive, food on our basket or on our plate.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I must say that this is a billboard it's quite a long billboard because we've had to fit that entire statement. But African food systems should be transformative in such a way that we have nutritious food, not only in our baskets, but on our plates. I think His Excellency has started off on a good footing. I wonder if anyone is going to be able to outperform him. Maybe let's go to His Excellency Musa Faki, please. Your Excellency, your billboard starts with African food systems. What would you complete that sentence with?
L'Afrique doit être au moins autosuffisante sur le plan alimentaire.
So there we have it. It's a fantastic billboard. Africa must be self-sufficient. Now, I really think that that's really getting close to a billboard that we're all going to remember. It's a beautiful phrase, it's impactful, and it's to the point. Your Excellency, I think you've done tremendously well. Let's go to His Excellency Abiy Ahmed, and let's hear from His Excellency if he can do one better. Let's hear your voice, Your Excellency. African food systems, if you're still with us. So I'm not hearing His Excellency Abiy Ahmed, so I'm going to go to Her Excellency Amina Mohammed, who brought in the wings. Thank you very much. So, Madam, I'm sure that this is going to be a billboard that is inclusive, that has a gender element to it, but let me not put words in your mouth. African food systems.
African food systems, the green transition we need, leaving no one behind, especially our women and youth.
African food systems, the green transition we need, leaving no one behind, especially our women. It is a special billboard, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, it has had to be extra long, but certainly an inclusive message that we've heard from Her Excellency.
Maybe what I would do is change it. I would make sure that we have the shape of Africa in the face of a woman, and that's where my green transition we need, leaving no one behind.
So what I'm hearing, Your Excellency, is that you are even bringing a creative element to this conversation. You're not going to be outdone by not having the images. I can see President Paul Kagame quickly writing down his own statement, because I can see that he really wants to make sure that he is not outperformed in this one. So to take us home, as we bring it all home in this conversation, Your Excellency Paul Kagame, African food systems, if you will, sir.
I'll try to make it simple for the people in the traffic, for those of us, like some of us who have a short memory, so that people can have something to grasp and take home. I would say African food systems, men and women, let's go and put an aircraft taking off. A picture.
I must say that definitely gets a round of applause. That definitely gets a round of applause from me. I'm sorry, Your Excellency Amina Mohammed, I think you might just have been outperformed in the imagery there. We are playing on your aircraft and we are certainly taking off. To our Excellencies, thank you for an incredible conversation and for really leading the pathway into the conversation as we think not only beyond this summit, but we think to 2030 and beyond, to 2063 and beyond. I'd like at this moment to invite the voice of an honorary guest, His Excellency Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, who through video presentation has sent us this very special message.
My dear friend, President Paul Kagame, I want to thank you for inviting me to speak at this presidential summit session of the 10th Annual African Green Revolution Forum. I know that you are one of the most forward-thinking leaders that I've met. You are hosting this important green revolution is a testament to that. You are committed to modernizing African agriculture, not only to achieve sustainable food production, but to create a vibrant agricultural sector that can be a catalyst for even stronger economic growth. Now, in this quest, Israel is Africa's partner. In my 5 years to the continent, over the past 5 years, I've seen firsthand how cooperation with Israel can make a tangible difference for African farmers, because Israel is a global leader in agrotechnology, in effective water management, especially drip irrigation, in innovations that keep agricultural produce market fresh, dairy farming technology that significantly increases milk production, precision agriculture that lets the farmers know in real time exactly what is going on in their fields, new methods of fish farming that greatly increase output, seed breeding for stronger and healthier crops. So all these reasons and many more, hundreds of students from Africa come annually to Israel to study agricultural capacity building. And in Kigali, you can see some of Israel's agro-science on display at the Rwanda-Israel Horticultural Center of Excellence. This is a joint project of Israel and Rwanda. And my good friend Paul Kagame, I have fond memories from my visit to Rwanda in 2016. I remember your historic visit to Israel in 2017. You and I both know that Africa and Israel are natural partners. In many ways, Africa and Israel are perfect partners. I wish you all a successful forum.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we have officially come to the end of our 4-day journey. What a beautiful journey it has been. What a meaningful journey it has been. One that has been littered with lessons and learnings and provocative questions and robust discussions and debate and sharing of ideas and leaning in to the challenges of our time. At this point, I'd like just to re-emphasize our key messages that as you log off today, hoping that they will be seeded in you and will continue to germinate in policy areas, in the activities of your organizations and of the institutions that you run, and even in the business ideas and business models of agripreneurs across the continent. Our key messages are clear. And they are that our priorities are clear as a starting point, that we need to ensure that we are preventing this health crisis from becoming a food crisis, that we must compete to feed Africa's cities. For when Africa feeds itself, we know that Africa feeds the world. We must improve our food systems to deliver on our goals. We must empower our youth because the future of Africa's agriculture and food systems rests with the youth. More than 10,000 of us stepped forward in this year's AGRF summit. Now the question is, can we step forward together, and how will you lead as we take that journey of stepping forward together? Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your journey with us. And thank you for witnessing this incredible moment for the continent, and that one that will have lots of relevance for many years to come, and to fuel our work as we look to further horizons.